Hey guys, Mr. Siciani here. Um, I'm going to go ahead and start uh, another mini lesson for you guys. So yeah, this is another reading mini lesson. Um, and this lesson is kind of going to focus on what you would do during your reading. And we're going to highlight or talk about a mental imagery log during this lesson. So reading mini lesson while you read or during reading, and it's going to be a mental imagery log. That's what we're going to discuss. So our objective or purpose for today's lesson is going to be to give you the tools that you're going to need to be able to create mental images as you read and describe mental images with words or illustrations. Okay? So today, I want you to think about something. When I say the word mental, to what part of the body am I referring? Think about that for a second. Most of you are probably thinking the head, right? So, or maybe more specifically, like your mind. So when you're thinking mental, you're thinking your head or your mind. So today I'm gonna teach you guys a strategy that's gonna help you understand what you are reading. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna start to develop a mental picture or a picture in our minds called mental images. And just so you have a little bit more information about this, so when you're forming those mental images or pictures in your head while you read, it's going to help you do a few things. It's going to help you create a better understanding. And it's also going to help you remember what you read. So let's try something real quick. I want to see if you guys can recall the five senses that we use when we read or write. So let's just do a quick little review. So what do you think are the five senses? And I'm going to give you guys a second to think about it, and then I'll tell you. So we're thinking about the five senses that we use. I'm reading your mind, and I think somebody's saying touch. Yes, that's one. I can read somebody else's mind, and they are saying taste, smell, sight, and hearing. Touch, taste, smell, sight, hearing. Those are our five senses. Okay. Now, what I want you guys to do is another little exercise where you're going to close your eyes. Close your eyes. And I want you to start forming a picture in your mind. So we're going to form a picture in our mind. Think of a dog. Form a picture of a dog in your mind. And even further, think about how that dog looks, how that dog may smell, how the dog feels, and maybe how the dog sounds. And as you're thinking about this dog and you're forming that picture in your mind, try to be as descriptive as you can using those senses. Look, smell, feel, sound. Maybe even what color the dog is. What kind of tail does the dog have? Any of those things. And of course, you know how if anybody owns pets, sometimes they're a little bit stinky. So, what does the dog smell like? All right, let's continue this exercise. So, on this piece, I'm going to read you this sentence. And I want you guys to think about what words in the sentence help you build that mental imagery. Okay? So, let's start with reading the sentence, okay? With a screech of its wheels, the bright red car sped around the corner. So we listened to this sentence. While I read it, make a picture, or you should have been kind of making a picture in your mind. Okay? Now I'm going to read it for you one more time. With a screech of its wheels, the bright red car sped around the corner. Now think about this question here. What word tells you that the car is moving quickly? Let's think about that for a second. We're painting that mental picture. Okay, you might be thinking in your head the word sped. That's correct. So, sped. So now our mental image is moving, right? And we're starting to make some sort of like movie in our minds. And we could start to think about, what do you see just off of this one sentence? Well, some people might see a car speeding down the road. Now, they may even dig a little bit deeper and see a bright red car speeding down the road. The sense of hearing is also involved here. What do you hear? Well, think about the sentence with a screeching of its wheels. So maybe you hear that car's tires screeching on the pavement. Smell? Well, I'll tell you what came to my mind. Thinking about those tires screeching on the pavement, I was smelling the rubber from the tires in the air. So, this is the process of creating that mental image or that mental movie in your head as you're reading. And if it's a good piece of writing, um, typically a narrative or some kind of short story would kind of be a good one to focus on for this. You can find these clues and start creating that mental picture. All right. So what you see here is called a mental imagery log. And what I want to do is kind of talk to you a little bit about what this is and how you can use it. And I want to model the process of completing a mental imagery log. So you can see we have a mental imagery log. You could put the title, of the passage that you're reading, and then there's different boxes for each paragraph. And in each one of those boxes, we'll start painting that mental picture, hence mental imagery, of each paragraph. But before you would do that, I would ask that you read the passage to yourself from the beginning to the end. So that's what I'm going to do first. And we're going to focus on um, this article called Salvador, Late or Early by Sandra Cisnaro. And what we're going to do is while we're reading, we're going to think about making that movie in our minds as we're reading through it the first time. Okay. Then I'm going to teach you how to write a description, or even some people would like to draw pictures of their mental images. I'll then go forward and reread the passage, but I'm just going to do it one paragraph at a time. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have a think aloud after each paragraph, and I'm going to show you how you would kind of fill in that mental imagery log. Okay? So let's start by just reading the passage, and we're going to focus on reading the passage and starting to make or develop that movie in our minds. So I've already got the passage open on this other screen right here. So here is the passage. Salvador, Late or Early by Sandra Cisnaro. Salvador with eyes the color of caterpillars, Salvador of the crooked hair and crooked teeth, Salvador whose name the teacher cannot remember, is a boy who is no one's friend. Runs along somewhere in that vague direction where homes are the color of bedweather. Lives behind a raw wood doorway. Shakes the sleepy brothers awake, ties their shoes, combs their hair with water, feeds them milk and cornflakes from a tin cup in the dim dark of the morning. Salvador later early, sooner or later arrives with the string of younger brothers ready, helps his mama, who is busy with the business of the baby, tugs the arms of Celio, Arturo, makes them hurry, because today, like yesterday, Arturato has dropped the cigar box of crayons, has let go the hundreds of little fingers of red, green, yellow, blue, and nub of black sticks that tumble and spill over the beyond, the asphalt puddles, until the crossing guard lady holds back the blur of traffic for Salvador to collect them again. Salvador, inside that wrinkled shirt, inside the throat that must clear itself and apologize each time that it speaks, inside the 40-pound body of a boy with its geography of scars, its history of hurt, limbs stuffed with feathers and rags. In what part of the eyes, in what part of the heart, in that cage of the chest where something throbs with both fists and knows only what Salvador knows. Inside that body too small to contain the 100 balloons of happiness, the single guitar of grief, is a boy like any other disappearing out the door beside the schoolyard gate where he has told his brothers they must wait. Colexilio and Arturato scuttles off, dodging the many schoolyard colors, the elbows and wrists crisscrossing, the several shoes running, grows smaller and smaller to the eye, dissolves into the bright horizon, flutters in the air before disappearing like a memory of kites. So we just read through a very, very descriptive passage, Salvador later early. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to kind of teach you how to write a description or draw a picture of your mental imagery, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to paragraph 1 and I'm going to reread the passage, just that first paragraph, one paragraph at a time, starting with the first one. And I want you guys to listen to the words and start, again, forming that mental image, make that movie in your mind's eye. If you need to, close your eyes while you're doing that. And after I read that first paragraph, I'm going to stop and I'm going to do a think aloud. And as I do this think aloud, I'm going to start filling in my mental imagery log for that first paragraph. Okay? So what I have here is my first box in my mental imagery log. It's paragraph 1. And I wrote myself a couple notes before I jumped into that paragraph because I think it's going to help. So you're going to see, or maybe you might find some things in that first paragraph that describe touch, taste, smell, sight, and sound. Okay. And what I'd like to do is maybe start filling in some of those things that highlight those 5 senses. So let's go back to the first paragraph and see what we have. So Salvador with eyes the color of caterpillars, Salvador of the crooked hair and crooked teeth, Salvador whose name the teacher cannot remember, is a boy who is no one's friend, runs along somewhere in that vague direction where homes are the color of bad weather, lives behind a raw wood doorway, shakes the sleepy brothers awake, ties their shoes, combs their hair with water, feeds them milk and cornflakes from a tin cup in the dim dark of the morning. So you look at that first paragraph. The first thing that really stands out to me is their description of Salvador in that first part of the sentence. Eyes the color of caterpillars. So that kind of goes with sight, right? You're starting to envision somebody with eyes the color of caterpillars. You're starting to see maybe those that crooked hair and the crooked teeth. Um, they say whose name that the teacher cannot remember. So that gives you a description of the kid. It sounds like the boy who's no one's friend, who runs along somewhere in the vague direction where homes are the color of bad weather. So maybe he lives in, it sounds like a bad neighborhood. It gives me like a connotation of like a rundown kind of slum almost. It even says that he lives behind raw wood doorway. So there's not even paint on the doorway. We're starting to create that movie in our mind. Shakes the sleepy brothers awake, ties their shoes, combs their hair, feeds them. So it sounds like he is pretty much the older brother who kind of takes care of all of his other siblings, maybe because mom and dad have to work. They work wee hours at night and they kind of have to fend for themselves just to kind of make ends meet. So in that first paragraph, there's a lot of things that I'm going to go back to here that we could maybe even smell, we could see, maybe we could hear some of those images that they're painting for us. So we would go through and we would do that for each paragraph. So there's only 3 paragraphs. I'm only going to model just that one. But I think you guys kind of get an idea of where I'm going with this. So if you guys could begin to, when you guys read, think about those things and start creating that mental image in your mind. And that's going to help you guys out tremendously. And I'm going to go back and show you something real quick. I'm going to go back to the beginning real quick and work back this way. So here's what I was looking for. So again, we're forming those mental images so we can better understand and so we can remember more of what we read. So I hope this was helpful for you guys again. I want to show you that mental imagery log one more time real quick. Let me get to it. you can use this for anything that you read. All right. So hopefully this was helpful, guys. And we will see you guys next week.